Here in Amsterdam, and I want to take this opportunity to tell you about the best natural eye I've ever seen. And Amsterdam's the right place for that because this is actually where I met him. Turns out he was a boot camp student, and I got him on the third night of boot camp. It was back in the day when we used to do like mixed boot camps with a lot of different instructors, and the legend had already developed. The first night of boot camp, he had pulled with one of the other instructors, and they'd gone home with some girls. And the girls had spent the entire night trying to ditch the instructor and have a threesome with him. Second night, different instructor, same story. They'd pulled together, him and an instructor, two girls, and then the girls were trying to have a threesome with him and ditch the other instructor. So I came in and I'd heard the legend, I'd heard the rumors, I'd heard how good this guy was, and everybody's like, holy shit, what is this guy? And I was asking, why did he even take a boot camp? Turns out that he was uncomfortable doing a cold approach up until the start of the program. He'd been with tons and tons of girls, but he's uncomfortable doing a cold approach. So I actually got him on the third night, and watching him was truly, truly eye-opening, because at this point, game was very verbal. It was very like, you have your little neg, you have your little routine, you push, pull, that kind of stuff. And his game looked very different. His game looked a bit like this. That's it. Right? He was basically, I was doing a little bit of a caricature, but essentially what he was doing is he had good, strong body language, good eye contact, and he had this smirk on his face, and he just didn't take the girls that seriously. And their reaction was fucking priceless. They would look at him, and they would get as high a buying temperature, as much state pump, as when you were delivering like the best, most funny routine you'd ever seen in your entire life. They'd like look at each other, go into state, look at him, go into state some more, like act like idiots for a couple, like 30 seconds to a minute, and then they'd start to come out of state, and they'd look back at him and go right back in state. It was fucking ridiculous to watch. Couple other little funny tidbits about his game. He actually knew English and Dutch, but he would game in English only because he was amused by the fact that if he gamed in English, the girls would talk about him in Dutch. And so he'd be gaming, and then they'd start talking, he'd look over and be like, yeah, they're talking about how they want to fuck me now. The vibe was like clearly better than them. Like it was sort of like a statusy vibe, but without being uptight. Without having to stick up your ass, but just that like secure knowledge of, look, I'm better than you. But that's okay, you're still cute, I still like you, I'll still fuck you. He was hot and fun. And they didn't, if you'd ask them explicitly, are you gonna have sex with him, do you wanna have sex with him? It'd be tough to say what their answer would be. It might be yes, it might be no, or it might be like, well, he's hot, but let me see. But the point was that they were intrigued, they were excited, they liked the possibility, and there wasn't really any downside or judgment, so why not go with him? Status, experience, the thought of someone sexually, and then something about appearance, look, vibe. Some combination of that, mix it all together, that's the sort of hot I'm talking about in this context. To be fair, I mean, we really had to like tell him to pull. He'd just kind of look at us and be like, okay, what now? He'd be like, I don't know, take him somewhere. He'd be like, okay, fine, and just do it. It wasn't that he wasn't doing it because he was insecure about it. He just didn't know what the next step was. He was used to girls coming to him and being so overtly on that they'd handle all the logistics for him. So handling logistics was, I guess, new to him, but he didn't have to like preamble it or figure anything crazy out. He was just like, all right, you want to go somewhere? Girls, let's go. And just go. I mean, he really did have like full control over the interaction, which is funny because he wasn't trying to and he didn't care to, but he just did. It was clear that he'd been with girls before. It was clear that he wasn't shy about sex in any way, shape, or form, and like in his grin and in his look, there clearly was like not a ton of innocence, but it was sort of the mirthfulness of it all. It was like he's very light. Right? I think a lot of guys they can't be sexual without being overtly sexual because they're too serious. But he was so lighthearted and fun, and not fun like telling jokes fun, but just generally just extremely relaxed and non-judgmental and just happy that he didn't need to be overtly sexual in order to be sexual. So that's a little synopsis of what his game looked like and what the experience of winging with him was like. But let's get to the heart of what made him so good. Where did this come from, and what can you learn from it? What can you emulate? Well, let's look at his history. Turns out this guy was actually a professional athlete. Now, he wasn't famous. He wasn't like a well-known professional athlete where people were recognizing him, but he had grown up with that culture. So ever since he was 13, he'd walked off of the playing field and he'd had girls kind of lined up ready to sleep with him and his teammates. So he'd been getting laid from a very young age, and more to the point, he'd had crazy abundance from a very, very young age. So it was in his reality not as a thought, not as a maybe, but as an absolute certainty, like with the same level of certainty that you and I believe in gravity, like that you believe if you drop something, it will fall to the ground. That's the level of belief he had, that girls wanted to sleep with him, he was the prize, and that they were lucky to be with him. That is the attitude he had. And so you could tell in all his interactions that he liked girls, he liked sex, but he just found it very amusing, and he found it this like sort of silly little thing that wasn't a big deal. And it was like, you know, it's gonna happen no matter what, so who the fuck cares? And actually, probably the only thing we really taught him on boot camp was this. We taught him to go up and just introduce himself. That's it. Because up until that point, he had gotten girls his whole life, but he'd always gotten the girls that chose him because of what he did. He'd never had to actually do a cold approach. And he'd always wondered, and he tried to imagine doing a cold approach, and it just didn't compute for him. So what we had to teach him was like, hi, my name is, his name, and that's it. Besides his results and his backstory, there are really two things I remember technically about his game. The first is the body language. Basically, he had this posture, this like hands crossed, I'm better than you, life is great, you're silly, I think you're cute, but I don't take you seriously. He conveyed all that with just a look, and it had incredible effects. And it was great because he truly was investing less and doing less in the interaction, whereas the girls were investing more, doing the talking, putting in all the energy, burning all the calories. So it really did put him in that position of the decider, the chooser, the abundant one. The other thing I remember about him was the one line I ever heard him say, I'm sure he said other things, but this is the one I remember 10 years later, which was the one gamey line I ever heard from him. And this was, the girls were like, I can't place it, like, you're somebody, I know I have to have seen you somewhere, you're somebody special. And he's like, yes, I recognize you too, from porno. It was the one and only line he ever fucking said that I remember. And it was so funny because it was so badly miscalibrated, so badly timed, but so self-amused. And the girls, I swear to God, laughed for like a minute straight, okay? So the point of this whole story is, I guess, one, to open your eyes and show you what's possible and let you know that there are levels and levels and levels of game, and you probably have not even touched the surface of what's possible. But the other is to highlight the value of true abundance, the value of really being that high value guy who knows absolutely that he can get girls, as opposed to all the techniques that are meant to simulate it. All right. Now, obviously, you get there over time, you get there through experience, but understand that the inner game and the attitude always will matter more than the technique. Technique without attitude will get you nowhere. Attitude without technique will oftentimes create its own technique. Even if you're miscalibrated, even if your technique is a little off, the attitude will shine through and get you the result.